Okay, this video is going to show you how to do your high score entry. So I'm assuming you've already got a high score table set up and you can see the contents like this one. So I'm going to add it to this project. The first thing we're going to need to do is to create a new class for this project. So I should have done this several times anyway. So I'm going to call this high score entry. Okay, and that creates that. It might take a little bit longer on yours. As soon as you've done that, delete everything in it, open blank, copy everything from blank, and put it in there. Okay. Right, we're going to need to keep track of the player initials for this new score and the score they got. So let's create some storage space for that inside our new high score entry module. So I'll set that to nothing. That's going to hold the text for their name, and we're going to create a score which I'm going to set to 0 for now. Okay, like all new modes we need to make a switcher, so I'm going to say score entry switcher, and it's not going to do much. Let's tell the engine to, when it's convenient, show the high score display. Start high score entry. Okay, now that doesn't exist, so I'm just going to create that just below. So I'm going to say void start. I'm going to copy and paste that, make it easier for me. Start high score entry. Okay, now in order to test it, we haven't got a game, so you can't get a score on your game. So what we can do is we're going to make sure we've always got a score that's the best score. Okay, and we're going to do that by cheating. So at the start of this, we're going to say player score equals, and we're going to ask the score table, my high score table is called score table, what the top score is, and then we're going to add 10 to it. So the player is going to have 10 points more. Okay, and then we don't necessarily want to do name entry if the player hasn't got a score, and you can check that. So you can say if score table, so that's the name of my score table, score check. So I'll give it the score I want to check, which is in player score, and if that isn't equal to -1, then we've got a score that's going to fit in the table. Okay, because what score check does is it tells you the position you'd occupy in the table. So that's what that does. So if that's true, we're going to put some code here. So let's prepare new score. Just put a comment in there. If it's false, it's not true, really what we ought to do is go and display the high score table. Anyway, just show them how lame they've been for not getting on the score table. Okay, so I use my high score display switcher, or whatever you called yours. Remember, don't literally copy what I've got, because you've named everything. So let's set up this high score entry mode. So let's change the game state to, I think I've got a high score entry one. Yep, high score entry. Let's clear everything, so that gets rid of all the graphics, tile maps, sound. For my NAF thing, I've got no background graphics, so I'm just going to change the screen colour to grey, so you don't have to do that one. Grey. Okay, and I'm going to make sure I set the initials to empty to start me off. Okay, and that's as much as I can do yet. I've got to set everything up now. So what I need to do is I need to create essentially a menu that's got all the alphabetic characters on it. Okay, but to make it easy for myself, because that's a lot of characters to place on screen and you have to manually place them all, I'm going to use the track system to space out all the characters. Okay, so I'm going to create a subroutine. So you probably won't have seen the track system before. The odd person's been shown it. So just below my score entry code, I'm going to create another subroutine, and I'm going to call it score entry line track. Okay, score entry line track, and this is going to define my track. So defining tracks, quite a simple process. It looks worse than it is. So we create something that is going to hold our points, okay, which is a list of three-dimensional positions, vector 3s, and then we just define, we create it first, and then we add the points we want. Now I want to be able to place all the alphabetic characters, so that's 26 characters, plus a space, that's 27 characters, plus a rub and an end character. Now the rub and the end characters on the fonts are quite wide, or you might want to use your own sprites for these, so we're going to add those two separately. So what I want to make is a line of points that's got 27 points in it to place my alphabetic letters and my space, but I want the computer to work it out where all the in-between positions is. I want to be able to just specify the left hand side and the right hand side, because it makes it easy for me. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a new vector 3, and I'm going to start at 20 at height 400, that'll do me, and Z position 4000. Okay, so that's all that does. Then I'm going to add another point to add, new vector 3. Right, so my right hand edge, bearing in mind I need a rub and an end character, I'm going to stop it at about 680. Obviously you'll have to play with these numbers yourself to get the effect you want, otherwise you'll end up with something looking like what I want. Okay, so what we now need is somewhere to store this track. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and be clever here. I'm going to call this track graphics.td high entry, and I'm going to ask the track helper to create these in between points for me. High score line, I have to give it a name. How many points do we want? Well, we said we wanted 27 points. For 26 for the alphabet and a space. And where are these points coming from? Well, the points line that we've made. So we made a line called points, and we're asking the track helper to create for us 27 individual points along that line, so that we don't have to work them out. Right, this doesn't exist. Now, let's see how clever Visual Studio is. I'm going to right click on that and say generate. If I say generate a field, hopefully, and I'm going to check this, if I right click on that now and say go to definition, it's created for me a track definition. So that saved me a bit of work. Okay, so it's done that for me. What we want to do, I want to add to this track definition 2 more points. Okay, so I'm going to say graphics.td high entry points, and I'm going to add to that. So this is adding it to the track definition. Right, well I'm going to put the rub character at 700, 400, and again you'll have to play about with these depending on what font you use and what size you make it. You might need to move things around quite a lot, but this will give you a feel for how it works. Add new vector 3, and the end character 600, 400, so they're all going to be in a line. Okay, so in total we've got 29 points. I'm going to write that, 29 points in total. Oops. Okay, right, this track, I need to define this before I create my high score menu. So in my startup code, before I do menus, I'm going to say create tracks. Okay, so I'm in startup.cs, just in the setup tasks bit where you create your menus and everything. Oops, I'm always doing that. So I'm going to right click on that to generate it because it doesn't exist. Generate method. And in there I'm going to run my score entry line track. Notice I started typing track because I knew it had track in the name, and the IntelliSense box helped me. Okay, so I'm making sure I'm doing that before the menu. If I don't, I'm going to have trouble. Okay, in my menu, create menus, I'm now going to ask, I haven't got any menus in this set up, but I'm going to create my high score entry menu. So create score entry menu, I'm going to call it. Doesn't exist. I'm going to say generate method stub. Now I want this all in the menu, the high score entry code, so I'm going to cut that. So I've highlighted those lines, Control X to cut, go to my high score entry, and I'm going to paste it there above those last two braces. Okay, so this is going to create my menu, this code. Right, so let's have a think about what to do. It's your standard menu system. So again, I haven't got a menu definition for this built. Okay, so I'm going to just call it high entry, and I'm going to see if I can get Visual Studio to make it for me. New menu, what should we call it? Entry, and it's going to be a sprite menu, even though I'm not going to create any sprites for it. You'll see in a minute. I'm going to get the engine to do all the work. Right, so it's moaning that MNI entry doesn't exist. I'm going to right click on it and say generate field, and hopefully if I just move my mouse over it, it's created me a menu. Okay, so it's created it for me, and it could do that because I said equals new menu, so it knew what type of data it was. Right, I need to make sure I add my menu to my menu manager. I could see that I was selecting things. Add it to my menu manager. So graphics, MN, high entry. Okay, now I want to add the characters to my menu. So I'm going to create a string called choice, and I'm going to put in there uppercase A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, plus a space, plus a less than sign, which is the rub character, and a greater than sign, which is the end character. So I'm telling, well, I've created a string with all the characters I want. Okay, now what I'm then going to do is I'm going to say graphics.mn high entry, add not an item to the menu but a list of sprites. Okay, now this is easy to generate because I can ask the text manager. So this is going to be a long line, so I've broken onto the page. Let me just move that. So I've just started the next line. So I'm going to ask the text manager to sprite generate character sprite list. It's a bit of a mouthful. I couldn't think what to call it. I got all confused when I named that, and I can't be bothered to change it. Right, so this is going to generate a sprite for each one of those characters that I've specified there. Okay, from my chosen font. So I'm going to use, as I always use on my videos, my Gradius font, because it's the best font in the world. Right, the requested characters are my choice. The size, I'm going to go for 1.25, so 125% of the normal size of that font. And the colour, I'm going to be super boring and just put white. Okay, so that is what we're adding the list of sprites from. So that's going to generate that for me. So at the end of this line I need to put another parentheses to mark the end of the add list of sprites before I put my semicolon. So I've got two at the end because I've got one opening one there and one opening one there. Okay, right, what I now need to do is to say, okay menu, you're being very clever for me, but now spread all that across a track. So I'm going to say MNI entry, track and spacing, and I'm going to give it the name of my track, which was TD high entry, and I'm going to say space them every one position because there's a point for every character. Okay, so I've got 29 different characters that I want specified in that choice string, and I've got 29 points in my track. Okay, right, like any menu I can have tags and I can have selectors. So I'm going to create a couple of selectors just below this. So I'm going to say void chosen. Now you have to be careful that you haven't got matching names already for any of these. So this is going to be what I'm going to do to it. So I'm going to say, let's make it bigger. So the chosen letter is going to be twice as big as normal, and the wash of it I'm going to change to color.lime. Okay, and the normal ones, the ones that haven't been selected, which I'm going to call normal. So this is just like any other sprite menu. I'm going to set the scale back to 1.25 and the wash back to white. Color dot white. Okay. So if I add those two in to my menu, so back up to my menu card, graphics.mn high entry on. Selecting the sprite, so if we've got the actual sprite that we're currently selected, we want chosen, and mn.entry.on reject sprite, we want normal. Oh, if I can get this stupid thing to pick normal. Okay, I'm also going to use a tag to highlight this. So I'm going to create a tag, but I'm going to create the world's most simple tag, and that's just going to be a rectangle. Well, I'm going to make it like a little underline, but I'm going to use a rectangle for it. So I say sprite s equals new sprite, and I'm just creating this again underneath my menu. I'm not doing it inside it, I'm after the brace that closes the menu. Right, I don't add this to the engine because the menu does that itself. So I'm going to say define, and I'm going to ask the engine manager for its rectangle texture, which is a 50 by 50 white rectangle. Okay, now I don't want it to be white, so I'm going to change the wash of it, and I'm going to make it the same colour. What did I go for? Lime. So I'm going to make it lime again, the same as the selected items colour, and I'm going to squidge it down. So I'm going to make it narrower, so shorter, not narrower. So I'm going to change the Y scaling to 20%. So that should be about 10 pixels high there. Okay. So if you've used a menu tag before, that's just the same old thing. If you want to put a fancy graphic, you do that. Right, so I'm going to add the tag. So I'm going to say tag, oops, I'm going to say graphics.m in high entry.tag follow selection, not make selection. You'll see that in a fancier video. So add a new menu tag, so that's going to be my entry tag, and my alignment, I want it underneath, so it's going to be like a little underline thing, so I'm going to say bottom. Okay. Right, so that should create my menu. So if I go now up to my start high score entry, I can show the menu. So I can say graphics.mn high entry.show. So that's just your standard thing. What I also want to do is make sure I always select the A character when I start this. So I'm going to say graphics.mn high entry.select item, and I'm going to say A. One thing I should tell you, if we go back to the menu definition here, when you use add list of sprites, it uses these characters, these individual characters like A, to be the name of the menu item. So the A is named A, B is named C, and so on. Rub and end will be named less than and the greater than characters. So we'll need that when we're trying to match them up later. Okay. Right. I need some input code. I'm going on for 90 minutes now. I'm going to stop it in a minute because I'll go over my 2 gig limit. My input code, I'm just going to make the menu come up. Okay, so I'm going back to input.cs. In my title screen, I'm just going to say if input manager, well I would do if I start with an I, input manager dot key pressed keys dot D1. I'm using D1, you might want to use a different key. So if they press 1 to start a game, I'm going to go to the high score oh, what did I call it? Score entry switcher. No, it's score entry switcher. That was it. So I'm going to run that subroutine. Just put the braces in to tidy it up. Okay, so let's try running it, see if I've made a mistake. So that's a lot of code before we run it. So I'm on my title screen, press 1, there's me menu code. Right, let's quickly put the other input so we can just move it to make sure it's working for us. So you can see the nice little underline in green. Okay, what I'm going to do, when we're doing this, we want to be able to hold the key down. Okay, so let's go back to high score entry, and we're going to create a timer. So in our start high score entry subroutine, the one we were just making, after we've shown the menu, we're going to ask the event manager to add a timer. Okay, timer is just a clock we can check. So we say new event, and I'm going to set this to 0.15. So let's put it at 0.1. So if I hold the key down, I will be able to move 10 places every second, roughly. So this is key, I'm just going to call it key delay. Or no, I'm going to call it entry delay. Okay. So that's just going to create a timer. I'm going to need that for my input code. So in my input code, I'm just going to say input manager dot key down. Oops, I'm being a bit of a Benny. Right. I need to create a new case. Case state high score entry. I'm trying to do it quick so I don't run over my 2 gig limit. Right, so I've created a new state in my check input. So I've got if input manager dot key down keys dot write and event manager dot elapsed, and it was entry delay with the timer name I gave. If that happens, I want to do graphics.mn high entry.next, and I'm going to do the same for the left key. So I'm going to copy and paste that, change the key, but I'm going to do previous. Okay, you can pause your video if I went a bit too fast there, because I'm just running out of my limit now. It's up to 23 minutes this vid. So hopefully I'm going to press my 1 to go to my high score entry. There you go, I'm holding the key down for left and right. Okay, so that's the end of part 1. The next one will do the actual entering of the score details. Okay.